Lee, welcome to Saturday night. You're looking extremely sharp. How are you tonight?
Thanks very much. I'm great, Jason.
That's good. I'm always pleased to hear that. And we've got a wonderful thumbnail depicting you here crossing
Yeah,
the Delaware. I like it.
it's a lot of fun.
Now, you had suggested that we are potentially facing a political revolution, not a civil war so much, but what is it exactly that you have in mind there?
Well, what I see across the country and across political spectrum, I'll say that too, Democrats and Republicans are getting sick of stuff massively, right? So that does not mean, and they're more sick of the government than they are of each other. They may seem like they're sick of each other, but they're more sick of the government, I think. You
Mhm.
see Democrats in places like New York and Chicago, black inner city Democrats complaining about immigration, right?
Crime. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's affecting them.
Hmm.
And uh, we know the complaints on the right, uh, free speech, January 6th, and so on. But I'm seeing the normal political lines don't apply anymore. Let's just do a thought experiment, Jason. Think about this. Uh, let's try to think about, and be fair, the number of different kinds of Republicans there are now. Okay, I'll give you one obvious example. A pro MAGA Republican who's in favor of Trump 100% and backs
Hmm.
Trump on all positions. That's one type. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay, we all know people like that.
Yeah.
Now, a second category, I would say, are Trump skeptical, not MAGA haters, and not people who are against Trump. They'll vote for Trump, but they're more critical of Trump and
Yeah.
disagree with him on things like, for instance, Israel, let's say. They're
Hmm.
not as pro-Israel as Trump's administration was.
You're right.
Now, a little more libertarian and pro-Assange, you
Hmm.
know, makes sense.
Hmm.
I'm based in that category, but I think it's a category. I think it's a clear category.
Hmm.
Okay. Then you have some people who are just establishment people. Now, I don't know who they are. I don't know who likes Nikki Haley. I don't know who likes Mitch McConnell. I mean it, but
Yeah. Well,
apparently,
I have some insight there because my dad was kind of he doesn't like Trump because he just thinks that he's a loudmouth and he's just sick of all the. I think it's mostly to do with every single friend around him absolutely hates Trump, and my father hates Biden. So he's sort of the anybody but Biden, and he sees Nikki Haley on television and figures, oh, well, that's not Trump. I'll like Nikki Haley. But now that she's out, he's back to Trump, but he just doesn't, he's kind of pinching his nose and voting for Trump because he hates Biden.
and so did you know any of Haley's positions, or was just she's
Not
not
really.
Trump?
Just saw her on the news and she's not Trump and she's the Republican and not Biden.
And I think some people are like that. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't know how many, but again, significant enough. I would say maybe 10, 20%, maybe. Agreed?
I have no way to gauge, but you're right. There are these different categories, and everybody has their different reasons. Some people like Trump but hate the fact that he's into the vaccine, so they want
Right.
maybe Kennedy. A lot of people now with this Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that was so smart of a suggestion for the vice president. You know, Rand Paul, Tulsi Gabbard. These kind of people make more sense as vice presidential pick. What did you think of that? I don't mean to be so non sequitur. Continue with your idea. We'll come back to that.
So I didn't heard that actually. Tell me
Oh,
about that, Jason.
well, that RFK said that Aaron Rodgers might be his vice presidential running mate, and Aaron Rodgers is like a football player who doesn't really seem to have a lot of experience in politics or running complicated things other than football teams and plays.
Okay,
He
so
sparked a furor.
I could think of all kinds of reasons for not having him, but I will say I don't think it would hurt Trump at the polls. I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of votes, it might get him votes actually.
Mm. I think it makes a lot of people think that Robert Kennedy is less of a serious candidate than they might have thought before he said this.
Yeah, I would say it's gonna. I would say it's gonna get him votes. I mean, again,
Mm.
celebrity power. I may not like it, but
Right.
it It's got
You
a
could be
value.
right. You could be right.
And so on the Democrat side, you can also break it down. Now, I read a tweet from Elon Musk, and Trump does this all the time. He describes Biden as radical left. Biden is not radical left by my definition of those words. Biden is, okay, broadly, he's, by the way, do you know where the term left and right come from?
Maybe a bird, wings.
No, it's actually the French Revolution.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In the French Parliament, the liberals sat on the left and the
Ah.
conservatives sat on the right.
Hmm.
So in the Parliament in France was the side they sat on, and that's where we get the term left and right. So again, that broad thing, conservatives, liberals in our country, Republicans, Democrats. Okay, Biden's a Democrat. Okay, and I agree. A lot of his policies are radical, but they're all couched. They're all disguised. They're wolves in sheep clothing. They don't use a rhetoric of radicalism, actually. Obama used it more than Biden does. Biden is a very, I'm using the term conservative, not politically, but like, cautious, is a
Mhm.
very middle of the road, generally safe political rhetoric. Couches is really evil stuff in, aw shucks, talking about pudding or stuff like that. So
But it's the people in the news who are the radical leftists, right? Keith Olbermann and all these people shouting nonsense on Twitter, getting everybody in a furor.
well, let's try defining that term, radical. What does radical mean?
I mean, it's going to mean something different to everybody, I would think. And also, if I start describing what I think it is here on YouTube, we'll probably get banned. But we'll be able to talk about that in more depth on the sponsor exclusive segment. And actually, before we answer that question, Lee, I do want to encourage people to visit patreon.com/Stranahan. Lee has a book coming out. Tell us about this, Lee.
So let's talk about all the stuff I got coming out, because
Yeah.
you'll want to join Patreon. If you're not a member of my Patreon, go to patreon.com/Stranahan, my last name, and join it. And because I got some big stuff, including discounts on a number of things. I got a show coming out May 12th, a new show, a one-man show, a speech presentation. I know what to call it, but I'm going to be premiering that May 12th. That's
Wow.
called Tales of a Journalistic Survivor. It's a story of my life in the journalism about the past 15 years or so, from writing for Huffington Post to meeting Andrew Breitbart, working with Andrew Breitbart on Pickford, on Anthony Weiner, of course, losing Andrew, then going to work for Russia in the middle of Russiagate, all stuff I faced since then my strokes, my collapsing in the White House, and then ended up on the psych ward for a week. So I'll talk about all that. It's going to be an amazing show, actually. Very interesting, full of all kinds of stories. Jason, you probably know a lot of these stories, but most people don't. My girlfriends would, because they have to listen to them. Make sense?
Yeah.
These are the stories that my friends know that I haven't talked about. For instance, I'll tell in depth the story of what happened with Bannon taking over Breitbart the night that Andrew died. I was the second person to find out that Andrew Breitbart was dead, the second person. And I talked to Andrew 3 hours before he died. I'll be going to detail about all that stuff in my show. It's going to be, I think, inspiring, which is a weird word for me to use, but I really do. Because let me tell you what's motivating us, Jason. I'm sick to death of seeing my friends, colleagues, and people I admire dying and put in prison for truth.
Yeah.
I'm sick. I'm just sick of it. Journalism killed Andrew Breitbart, not in the way people think, but I'll talk about that in the show and in my book. But I believe the pressure of journalism did contribute to Andrew's death very clearly, because Andrew was in a hospital about a year before he died, and he kept his secret. I'll talk about that. But he kept his secret. And then right before he died, about 3 hours before he died, he told me he felt his heart a heart palpitation on the plane, a heart palpitation. So I said, well, I know you've been in the hospital. So I said, are you okay? Do you think there's something wrong? He said, I think it's because I take so many arrows for people. And Andrew really did take a lot of arrows for people. If people were under pressure, Andrew would let the attacks go on him because he knew he was a target for that stuff. And I think taking on that pressure, again, the doctor told Andrew, look, you've got to take it easy. You've got to work less and take it easy. Now, does it seem like Andrew in the last year of his life took that advice? Does
No.
it seem to be taking it easy? Right?
No.
Right. And so, so if there's a message to the show, I'll talk about it. I think the same thing in a different way affected me. I think that's why I collapsed in the White House and why I contributed so much to my first stroke. The COVID vaccine may have something to do with subsequent strokes. I don't know. I can't say, but I know I had a stroke before the vaccine existed. So
Right. The first one, sure. Yeah.
right. So so I've got that show, and then next week I've got a book called 18 Months about my friendship and work with Andrew Breitbart. That's gonna be a short book. You'll be able to read it in an hour or two. But very detailed book going over from meeting Andrew Breitbart, and I was talking for 3 hours the first night we met,
Wow.
and we're working on Pigford, the backstory of Pigford, the story that they would not let me report at Breitbart about Pigford, and the story that the film that Steve Bannon personally killed. I'll talk about all that, and then the Anthony Weiner story, Andrew's death, and I'll also ask the question. It's a tough one to ask, but I got to do it. What would Andrew think of Breitbart now? And
Not much.
I don't have to guess. We
Yeah.
actually know. I'm not psychic. I'm not hearing Andrew from beyond. But right before he died, Andrew held a bid meeting with the company and told people what he wanted the company to do. I'll talk about that in the book.
Wow.
And he told them exactly what he wanted the company to do. He said, I want more reporting like Lee does, more independent reporting. I don't
Wow.
want to do like, he said, I didn't become independent media to do the same stories that CNN,
Right.
New York Times, and Fox News cover. Like getting an interview with Mitt Romney.
Not interested in that.
He told everyone, he said, I'm not interested in that. And again, I criticize Bannon in some ways, but I know Bannon. So people say I worked for Steve Bannon and then I went to work for Russia. So how do I like working for a horrible dictator? And I'll say, look, that's a little harsh about Steve. So, but I'll talk about that in my book coming out next week. And
wait, Lee, let me ask you
yes.
this. So if people subscribe on patreon.com/Stranahan, can they get the book that way, or is it a separate thing?
The book is going to be for sale separately, but I'll be posting some parts of the book on Patreon. And
Okay.
my show, I'll be rehearsing starting next Sunday, segments of the show. I'm going to rehearse the show a little bit at a time, do 10 minutes here, 50 minutes one week, and then by May 12th, I'll string it all together. Make sense?
Yeah.
So,
Well, show us that, if you can. You had that book cover that you were showing me before we started. That looked really good, using AI to create images of Andrew Breitbart. That was pretty, there you go.
yeah.
That looks great. Well done.
Yeah. And that book's going to be $10. And by the way, or 1,000.
What do you mean?
Let me explain.
I'll take the $10 version, please.
Well, maybe it's going to be a good deal actually. For $1,000, you get the book, okay? But you get the book. I'm selling out, Jason. I'll admit it. If you want the book dedicated to you, as a person or as a company, so like let's say you've got a bakery.
You sponsor the book. You're saying somebody could pay $1,000 to be a sponsor and have their name in the book as having sponsored
I've
the
only got
publication
one
of the book.
spot with that. For $1,000, someone can be the dedication. I'll mention that you paid. I'm not gonna lie. I won't say
Right.
Citizens Kids, but I'll mention it. And in the audio book, I'm going to do an audio version of the book as well. And
Mhm.
so I think if you break it out, I think the book will sell well.
Yeah.
And
Oh, definitely. People want to hear about this. And I mean, you were one of his best friends.
right. And he said the most successful journalistic venture he'd ever done. He said
Wow.
that right before we passed. So again, I don't have to guess what Andrew thinks about some things. I know what he thinks about some things. He said it. And I'm going to play, I'm also going to talk about, I'm going to include a dossier, an index in the book of extra material. So if I talk about Pickford, I'll give you a link to the archive.org version of the story I'm talking about. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So the book's going to be really documented. If people want to research stuff on their own, they'll be able to.
That sounds really good, Lee. I think this is a great idea, and people definitely want to know more of the details about what was going on with Andrew Breitbart, and nobody was closer to him than you. You know, just as you were talking about him right now, I found this thing that I haven't seen before. Have you seen this Hollywood Reporter article where the guy says he was meeting with Breitbart to interview him 50 minutes before he was pronounced dead?
I believe it.
Oh, wow. This guy, Matthew Baloney. I've spoken to him on the phone because I got pissed off at the Hollywood Reporter when they ran that story from the Emmys that was quite negative about me. Well, Lee, we're just about out of time here on our YouTube intro to the show, but we're going to dig into this political revolution that you want to tell everybody about when we continue just 15 minutes from now on patreon.com/Stranahan. People can also join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We got a lot to talk about, so stay with us, everybody. Join us for the sponsor exclusive segment. We'll be right back in 15 minutes. Thanks for tuning in.